Today on the TBN Israel podcast, we answer the question of what is happening in Syria. Syria is a country that's been up in flames for over a year now, and the last couple months have been marked with an incredible amount of violence against ethnic minorities in the country. And now Israel is taking a part in what's happening inside of
Yeah,
Syria.
definitely. Hi, Mati. It's good to be here.
Hi, Yair Pinto. Welcome back to Israel.
Hello, guys. All the way from Austria and the United Kingdom. It's great to have you here on the set with us. And Tomer, how are you doing?
Great.
It's really great to be here in Israel. And yes, Mati.
So let's talk about what's been going on.
The Israeli Air Force have been striking in Syria basically since the Assad regime collapsed and even before that, but more intensely now when the Assad regime is carrying out attacks against the Druze and the Christian communities south of Damascus, which is on the border with Israel.
Let's start from the end. We had a question in our head for the last year. Is El-Julani or Ashara or whatever the name is currently, is he a jihadist in a suit?
Yes.
Or is he, well, and that we have the answer. Or is he a reformed man who is trying to lead Syria into a new future? And we have the answer. The answer is he is a radical Islamic jihadist, and the people that follow him are the same. And Syria is doing exactly what we were saying it was going to do, and everyone was saying it was going to do, is exacting violence against ethnic and religious minorities, doing so in a rapid succession, and at the same time starting to destabilize the region and the country around them. And we see that in attacks against the Alawite community a couple months ago, now against the Druze. We see that in the greater footprint that Turkey has within the country, and now Israel has to step in to stop a massacre that's happening across our border. So all in all, sort of jumping to the end, a country destabilized by radical Islam once more.
Exactly. Let's talk about some key issues that we're going to discuss today.
But before we're going to dive into the details...
Okay, Tomer, thank you so much for reminding us. Guys, if you haven't subscribed to TBN Israel on YouTube yet, please do it now. Click the subscribe button, click this little bell. It really helps us reach more people. And also give us a comment. Let us know what topics you want us to cover in the next podcast or in general in the future. And that will help us reach more and more people. That's how YouTube works. We want to be engaged with you. So let us know where you're coming from, where you are watching this video from, and how are you praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Okay? So key elements for today's podcast. There is a massacre against the
Druze
minority in Syria. You have 118 that are terminated in Sanaya and Jaramanna. And the Druze militias are prepared for an attack, and they are calling on the United Nations for protection. The ones that are responding so far are Israel, basically. And we even took it was 13 injured Druze into an Israeli hospital in the northern part of the country. And Israel sent via air, like, how do you call it? Paratrooped air supplies? Airdropped supplies to the Druze communities in Syria. And they also striked very, very close, hundreds of meters from the palace in Damascus, where El-Julani is staying, in order to warn his regime not to carry out attacks against the Druze community. But it's a very fine line, because we do not want to go into a full-scale war, boots on the ground in Syria at this moment, but we still want to protect the Druze community and our northern border.
I think we need to answer the question of why Israel is even talking about aiding the Druze inside Syria. And to explain this shortly, within the state of Israel, we have several tens of thousands of Druze. And Druze are a minority that once was related to, is it Shia Islam? Anyway, they withdrew from Shia Islam, I believe. They're not considered Muslims, according to the Muslims. They're a sect that's very secretive in its religious practices, etc. That's not the point. The point is they're a minority that exists in Israel. In Israel, they serve in the army. They're very, very valued members of our society. And their family members live across the border within Syria. And they, for the most part, had a okay life under the Assad regime. They were part of the government sometimes. They were part of the army sometimes. But they were not massacred. And now they're being massacred. If you've seen the footage, and I encourage anyone who's listening or seeing this to look up some of the footage of what's happening there, it's not a war. The Sunni militias are being sent out after being incited and sort of riled up into violence, sort of like a frenzy in the mosques, sent out to go massacre the Druze community. And part of this started with we don't know what the actual origin is, this video that comes out that's sort of like a recording of a Druze cleric that is cursing the Prophet Muhammad.
That started all this round of violence.
And that's where the big number of casualties comes from. They sent out essentially hordes of people to go and start attacking the Druze communities. This isn't fighting on a battlefield or, engaging with them.
It was looking like the 7th of October for them.
Yeah, it was a massacre.
Yes.
And to frame this conversation, this isn't the first or second time this happens. It's been going on against the Druze for a while now. And before that, 2 months ago, it was happening against the Alawites, which are the religious sect, again, a small minority, not Muslim, that were connected, or they're the family background of the Assad family, the El-Assad family. And before that, it was happening to the Christians within Syria. So every minority in Syria is being attacked. And by attacked, I mean it starts with humiliations and beatings in the streets. It continues with, acts of violence and raids on their homes.
Enslaving the women.
And kidnapping people. And then the next thing you see is you see bodies strewn over, a landscape where people are just being killed as they walk to one place or another.
Yeah, and remember that one of the first things that El-Julani's regime did after toppling Assad was to open the prisons and release all the criminals. So then you have, huge amounts of criminals running free in the country, and then they're easily rallied up into groups and carry out these sort of attacks.
Yeah.
And the fear on the Israeli side is that amongst these criminals are also Hamas members and other Palestinian terrorist groups that are released. And the first thing that they're going to do is carry out attacks against Israel and against Israelis that are now defending us in Syria. So this is another element that Israel is watching very, very carefully, that rockets, chemical weapons will not end up in the hands of Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, in Syria or other groups.
Well, they've already ended up in the wrong hands. They
ended up in ISIS, basically.
Yeah, El-Julani is a affiliate of ISIS. He was and is. And what the Israeli army has been doing since, for the last 12 months almost, is bombing the weapon caches and heavy armor that they carried to prevent it from being used against Israel. And people, and I want to say this, by the way, do you know what the UN did in the last couple of days? They were very, very concerned about what's happening in Syria.
So they took a vacation.
No, you know what they did? They condemned Israel for violating the sovereignty of the Syrian people.
Oh, good.
That's the big concern.
I see.
Heaven forbid that people are killing their countrymen. But the big problem is that Israel is trying to stop a massacre. That's the big problem that they're dealing with.
Well,
Mati,
doesn't surprise me.
Yair, can you explain our viewers? I'm not sure that they are aware of why we so care about the Druze community in Syria, or generally why there is a connection between Israel and the Druze.
Well, I addressed that, but I think it goes deeper than people understand. When we serve in the army, and we have been a lot this last couple of years, the army is full of the Druze community members at a by the way, a very high proportion. And you find them everywhere in Israeli society. You find them in the government. You find them in civil service roles. You find them in the military. And they're a minority, or ethnic and religious minority in Israel that is very, very loyal to the people. And we see them as such. We don't see them, it's very different than, let's call it, the Israeli Arab population, where they sometimes turn against the people and they carry out acts of terrorism here and there and stuff like that. Very different. The Druze are active members of society. They speak Hebrew. They're embedded in our population. They're very, very open and welcoming and warm and public about their support of the state of Israel. And they're calling on us and saying, dude, we've been the guys fighting along your side.
Protect my family now in Syria.
These are my cousins, my uncles, my aunts in Syria. They're literally hundreds of meters away from us. We need to fight for them. And if you don't do something, we're going to fight. This is the statement that's being made. I'm trying to think what the name of the guy was. Just 2 days ago, I was watching an interview of one of the heads of the Druze community.
From Syria or from Israel?
No, in Israel.
Okay.
And he says essentially, look, we've been standing by your side every day for decades. And these are our family members. This isn't ethnicity. This isn't a religion thing.
Yeah.
These are our close family members. And you're asking us why we think you need to stop their massacre?
Yeah.
Clearly, there's an answer to this. And I thought to myself, if this was anyone else, if it was a Jewish community, and if it was a Yazidi girl in the Gaza Strip, then there would never be a question, because you would feel like there's more of an affinity. But here, because it's a minority, people from the outside are looking at this saying, well, we don't understand the connection. The connection is that the Druze are part of Israeli society, and they're a respected and valued part of Israeli society. And we look at that and we say, we have a covenant of blood with these people. They've fought along our side again and again and again, and we intend for them to continue doing that. And we respect them as the people that they are in our society, and therefore we must do something. That's why you see the Israeli Air Force essentially run a bombing mission outside of the presidential palace in Damascus to threaten the government, saying, "Hey, as we say in Arabic, dil balak.
Enough. Enough is enough.
It's coming your way if you don't stop doing this."
Yeah, definitely. So there is just Tomer is giving me here an official announcement of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli Defense Minister stating that Israel carried out this evening an official, like an aerial strike next to the presidential palace in Damascus. And this is a clear message to the Syrian regime. We will not allow forces south of Damascus, and we will not allow any threats to the Druze community.
It's amazing because our prime minister called the Druze our brothers, and that's the way I think everybody in Israel more or less feel about them as part of society. And it's sad to see stuff like that happen. What is the difference between the Druze community in the north to the Syrian border?
Or just the borderline. That's the only difference.
That's the only difference.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think what's interesting here is for, and I say this in favor of what our government is doing, in the Middle East, you are measured very, very, very sternly, very seriously over how you treat your allies. And it's not a question of how you treat them when the weather is fair. It's a question of when things go south and things are bad, how do you defend the people that have been fighting along your side? And Israel, by the way, has a debt to our northern neighbors. We remember, the Israeli people, and I can promise you the Druze people remember, that we were not good enough of friends and allies to the South Lebanese army when we pulled out in 2000. People remember that in this region. The Christian Arabs in Lebanon and Syria still remember that. We've done several pieces on this topic. Israel has to show the region that when push comes to shove and things are bad, we stand alongside our friends and our allies. And that's exactly the kind of thing that you need right now. Because we are not just a small country that fights for itself. We're a regional power, and we need to project our power in a way that shows that we protect our friends and our allies.
Yeah, exactly. And the stronger power usually gets attacked less. So that's the situation, and that's why it's also good for Israel, and it's good to honor your word to your allies in this region. But Israel also attacked the T4 base and other military bases in Syria that were also used by the Russians. What's the importance of these attacks against these bases, and why are we striking these attacks? Because we heard reports that Turkey, a NATO member, wants to bring forces there and provide aerial defensive systems. All that sounds very good and nice, and try to, create a stronger military for Syria and help them achieve the fact to be like a governing power and a sovereign country again. But why is Israel attacking these bases?
Well, Turkey's lying, obviously.
I tried to give it up for like a slam dunk for you.
Let's get to the point. Turkey took advantage of the power vacuum that happened in Syria, and what they did is when the Syrian army showed weakness under Assad, they saw an opportunity to get a foothold back into the Middle East. They saw the weakening of power of the Russians, and by the way, also the American forces in this region, who left when al-Julani took power to a certain degree. Most of their forces are gone, most of the bases are evacuated, both, by the way, American and Russian assets.
Yes.
And Russian assets. And they said, great, it's time for us to take a hold in this place. And they used that as a foothold to attack and threaten the people of Israel. Let's remind everyone that this week, Turkey also sent something else towards Israel. They sent a flotilla. You remember this? What was it, 3 days ago, 4 days ago? Let's say
it's still somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea, waiting to receive a port.
Somewhere in the Mediterranean is floating a disabled ship that had a group of terrorists and weapons on it on their way to free the blockade of Gaza.
Yeah.
This is not the first time the Turks have done this. They've done this also in the past with the Mavi Marmara. They're a terrorist breeding nation that sends terrorists to our shores and expects us not to respond.
In disguise.
I'm not
of
sure it's all
freedom
the nations.
fighters. In disguise
The
of
government.
freedom
The
fighters.
government.
It's a terrorist breeding government, excuse
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
I'm not saying the Turkish people are terrorists. It's the government that exports terrorism. And I think that's an easy claim to make.
Just to remind everybody
Turkish are
about
great people.
the Navy Marmara, that was a flotilla that was supposed to be filled with freedom fighters and activists, and they had boxes and boxes of weapons, of AK-47s, of ammunitions, machine guns.
Yeah.
And when our forces went on the ship to stop it before entering the Gaza Strip,
They tried to murder our soldiers.
they tried to murder our soldiers.
Yeah.
And our
And
soldiers
they almost
went
they
on.
almost succeeded.
Yeah, they went on with basically
With paint guns.
paintball
guns,
guns or something like
Yeah.
that, and that was like a big mistake. So this time, the Israeli Air Force and the
Oh, wait.
Navy learned better.
An unknown force
Yeah,
struck that ship with a drone strike in the sea.
Yeah.
Israel hasn't taken responsibility.
only harmed like mechanical parts of the ship.
Yeah.
Nobody was harmed, so that the ship will stop.
I know.
Very important to say.
Anyway, so all that to wrap up the conversation, where Turkey is an entity that is trying to get a stakehold in this region, and they're doing that at the expense of the Syrian people, and they're doing that to try to weaken Israel's position and ability to defend itself. So when we talk about these several Air Force bases that are being struck by the Israeli forces, the reason we're doing that is to prevent the Turkish forces from parking on our border. They're not a peacekeeping mission, and they're not here to protect the Syrian people. They're here to strengthen Turkish imperialistic mindsets and agendas in this region, and to do it at our expense.
Yeah.
So when we fly a mission into Syria, it's us on our border saying we'd rather not have an enemy army, and the Turks are behaving as an enemy. We don't want to have them on our border controlling the airspace.
Yeah, I think what we learned from October 7 is that the only way to defend our citizens is to have a buffer zone between us and our neighbors, especially the enemy states, with boots on the ground,
Yeah.
with military posts on strategic locations. That's what why we have 5 posts inside Lebanon. That's why we have the Hermon Mountain and other posts on the demilitarized zone in Syria, and that's what we're doing now in the Gaza Strip by creating an area that is cleared of buildings and basically a demilitarized zone that you can see the threats before they come close to your
Exactly.
civilians.
Our security office said that we using the Pac-Man method
What does that mean?
Syria.
To
eat small parts each time to make the buffer zone bigger each time.
what,
and
in Syria?
more yeah, next to Damascus. And if they will need, they will also do that to the Druze communities to bring them to be part of Israel.
They're great
Listen,
people to be part of Israel.
The Druze want that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want
The
that.
Druze want that.
Yeah.
That isn't Israel wishful thinking. That is the Druze wishful thinking. And they want Israel to take over them. They've asked for it multiple times in recent years. Not just now, but even under the Assad regime. They would love it more than anything else to have, to be inside the Israeli border. And they've asked for it multiple times in the past. So this is not a stretch at all of the imagination.
Yeah.
And look at what's happening. I think it's important to go back to the lives on the ground. In Syria, a country destabilized by radical Islamic jihadist mindset, every minority that existed in that country has experienced what it means to live under that radical Islamic government. And they've been massacred, and they've lost their rights, and they've had to flee their territory, and they've been seeing convoys of armed people come to kill people in their villages. That's what they're experiencing. So if there ever was a question about the identity and the true nature of this government, we now know what that identity is. Exactly. And you even see that, I mean, it's so blatant in the hypocrisy of it. Ashara or El Julani, whatever, he goes around, and when he's speaking to Western societies, he's wearing a suit. He literally, on the same business trip, switches on the plane into traditional Muslim garb and then visits the other Muslim countries. He makes a point when he's inside Syria, he visits the traditional mosques that are related to Muslim conquest in this region, going back to Salah ad-Din. So it's all this very intentional jihadist mindset that correlates back to ISIS mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we're fighting against. So people ask, well, why is Israel flying bombing missions inside Syria? That's why, because we don't want ISIS on our border.
We can read between the lines. That's the difference, because we see that all these terrorist nations are speaking one thing in English,
Yeah.
so that the West will be okay and happy, and then one thing to their followers in Arabic or in other languages that the West do not understand. So this is the situation, and we need to be ready. And it's tough because the international community always blames Israel for everything that's happening instead of, looking deeper and understanding the situation.
Because
especially the
it's
United Nations.
easier. It's easier for them to just say that Israel is the aggressor.
Because we are playing the same game, the same rules that they are playing. We are playing within the boundaries of international law, of military power, of international rules of engagement. So you can't blame a terrorist organization for not playing by the rules. Of course, they're a terrorist organization. But Israel, you can blame them.
It's look like, by the way, that just today they announced that Syria gonna sign a deal with Turkey about electricity and gas.
So this is where it's interesting, where I feel like in the past, the financial side of like these conflicts was always under the table and sort of quietly pushed through. And now, because I think of the Trump administration and the way they've been operating in this region, it's just become so open in the sense of being cynical about your end goal. Mm-hmm. In other words, it's like, we want military presence, and by the way, part of this deal is we want whatever assets you have on the ground in your country.
We'll take it.
We'll take them. We have a deal that you can't refuse. Wink, wink.
Just look at this soldier standing next to you.
we signed this contract, please. We're going to take your natural assets. And thank you, Tomo, for pointing this out. We look at what the Turks are saying. The Turks are going to be selling the Syrians who are unable to manufacture electricity for themselves. They're going to be selling them electricity. So that's cash coming through from Syria to Turkey. And then Syria is promoting a natural gas line crossing through the country that will connect into Turkey. This is very important because the Turks, one of their biggest regional concerns is a natural gas line running through the Mediterranean, which is Israel. It's Egypt, Israel, Egypt to Israel, then Israel to Cyprus, to through the Aegean Sea.
Two countries that are not happy with Turkey, and Turkey are not in good relations with them, which is Cyprus and Israel.
Part of Turkey's power in the region, in Europe specifically, is the fact that they control a lot of the movement east to west. They control the movement of people, the movement of goods, and they try also to have a stake in what happens in naval shipping and, of course, in natural gas and oil. They want to have more of a chokehold on what Europe has because it gives them more power. So they look at the alliance between Israel and let's call it the Greek countries. Mm-hmm. So Cyprus, I should say Greek Cyprus, and
just yesterday,
North
and Greece,
met with the Greece Cyprus.
Our prime minister.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yesterday, I can tell you what they said between them.
I can imagine what they said. They said let's ship oil from this region, not through the Turks. That's what they were saying.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it was a crazy week, Mati.
I didn't have a chance to catch up on the news yesterday with everything that's been happening.
Yeah, definitely. It was a super crazy week. Just coming back to Israel, there were the crazy live fires. Did you drive on Road 1 since then? I mean,
no,
it's almost reached your house.
I had to flee my house.
Yeah.
On, a week ago now.
Mm-hmm.
These are one of those things where you look up and it's like, I feel like it's been 2 weeks in the last 3 days.
Right? It's like so many events happened, from a Houthi missile attack to the live fires that burned 20,000 acres?
Probably pushing 30 now. Dunams, not acres.
Dunams.
Yeah.
So a little less acres?
A quarter.
Acres are bigger than dunams.
Acre is 4 times bigger than a dunam.
Okay.
I think. Anyway.
Basically, huge forests were burnt, all in the Jerusalem area.
Yeah, natural reserves. Yeah. And I just bumped into the other day to the father of one of my son's friends who works for Kakal, for the JNF. And, we're talking about this, and it's decades of rehabilitation for the forest. We're a borderline desert country, and this country experienced so much damage in the last couple weeks. And again, I don't like to be political about these kind of things and make accusations, but let's be clear here. There are enemy forces within Israel that were setting fire to the land of this country. Mm-hmm. We ran a campaign, a couple months ago?
Yeah, it's still running.
Called Rebuild Israel. And we thought we were done with the campaign.
Yeah.
Because
we're done with Hezbollah.
Yeah, we finished with Hezbollah. Hezbollah tried to burn northern
Hamas
Israel.
is not launching so many rockets, so the flames in the north and in the south are kind of under control.
Yeah, and what we did is we planted a whole lot of trees, thousands of trees actually, and we did so with the support of the viewers of this show and our channel.
Exactly.
And I think it was overwhelming, the support that we experienced. I was blown away by it.
And the campaign is still going. This is the last few weeks of this campaign. So if you want to take part and help us rebuild Israel, please go to www.tbn.org/rebuildisrael. Okay, you can go there, you support our work, and also you plant a tree in Israel. And the whole plan is something that I like, Mati, is that the enemies of Israel are trying to destroy this land, burn the forests. And what Israel does is planting and investing in the future. We believe we're going to be here in 25 years, 30 years, because when you plant a small tree, it takes more than 10 years until it becomes a nice tree, bear fruit, or give you shade. So it's really a long-term investment for our children, not for us.
I think it runs deeper than that. Yeah. It's highly spiritual and highly prophetic, because part of the miracle that we're living in this country is all, let's call it all end times prophecies talk about a supernatural restoration of the people of Israel, which we've seen, of the spiritual life of Israel, which we are seeing in present progressive,
definitely,
of the land being restored supernaturally, which is something that's happened for over 100 years. And the way it looks is a country that was barren, without trees, without life, without agriculture, barely, is able to be one of the most fastest growing agricultural powers in this region with technology and green. But you see this in satellite imaging, where the land is going from being brown to being green. And our enemies look at this, and they look at what they've done to their countries, and they say, we envy what has happened in this land. Let's bring them down to where we are. And that's why they try to burn our country. It's a wholly terrorist mindset, and it's completely spiritual in its basis. And it's people looking at what happened in Israel in a supernatural way and saying, let's try to destroy what's already happened in that country. And I say to people watching this, let's show them that they're wrong. Exactly. Let's show them that we can rebuild Israel and make it even greener and more beautiful, and that every community that was destroyed during the war will be rebuilt and be greater than it is, and many of them are, and that every tree that was burnt during this war will be...
We'll plant two trees instead
replaced by multiple trees. Exactly. And we'll show them, not by a force of death, but a force of life. We'll show them how wrong they are.
Definitely. And if you want to be part of this campaign to rebuild Israel, again, I'm going to let you know, it's www.tbn.org/rebuildisrael. Okay? So we have guests here from Austria and from the United Kingdom. Do you have any questions? Would you like to ask us something hard for Mati to have a hard time to answer? Just kidding. You can come up, you can stay there, whatever you prefer.
I just want to say
Can you just say it again into the microphone?
Okay, sorry. We appreciate very much what you're doing. We've been watching podcasts and programs and news since November 23, and
Thank you.
We are very, very happy that you're doing this and you're giving us the truth behind the news that we hear in the West and in Austria. Yeah,
do you have any
thank
questions?
you. Sorry?
Do you have any questions or things you've learned in Israel that you want to talk about?
First of all, I'm very grateful to be able to be here in Israel. And we've been here for a few days now, and it's amazing how safe you can feel in Israel. There's absolutely, you don't feel, well, we as visitors don't feel any threat at all, and it's just great being here, and it's just a free country, and we can go everywhere and see everything.
What's your favorite place in Israel?
Well, there are so many favorite places.
This studio. Just kidding.
Exactly, yes. Well, when we're back home, then we see you practically daily and watch you, so you are very well known to us, even though you don't know us so well. But yeah, it's great to be here. And yeah, when we staying in Israel, then we see so many friendships between Jews and Arabs, and how well they're getting on with each other, and we don't see the animosity. between them, but we also know that they are watching like Al Jazeera and all, you know, their Arab news and how biased they are and how, they see, of course, their point of view and how it's presented, like when Israel is operating in Gaza to free the hostages, and then they presented how, it's just largely exaggerated, and
Well, it's probably more one-sided than exaggerated.
that's
They
right.
just tell one side of the story. Israel attacks. Well, who are we attacking? Oh,
Why are we attacking?
I guess we'll never know. That's how they present it. I love that you said that, because I think you look at the window today. It's such a beautiful day in Jerusalem. Beautiful clouds. You know, it was raining earlier today, and people, you know, they describe this region as, you know, it's a region at war. And the conflict, oh no, and the fear. And then you walk in the streets, it is safer here than any European city and any American city.
Any American city.
That's
for
easy.
sure.
That's easy though.
You know.
When it comes to statistics, the U.S. isn't the safest place.
I just picked up a group of pastors from Texas when the missile landed in the airport, and they came and they said to me, you know, in every big city in the U.S., more people die in a year than since the war here started, or some like crazy statistic like that. So they feel super safe here, despite the fact that they had to wait because the debris of the rocket that hit the airport had to be moved around for them to get out of the airport.
But I think that's exactly the point that we need to make, which is when you walk the streets of this country, you don't feel the conflict, and you feel safe, and you feel like it is a unique experience. I feel that even though I live here. And I think that's something that people need to understand, is even though, because what the news shows you is the explosions, what the news shows you is Iron Dome, it shows you the conflict. The reality is, even during this time of, you know, ongoing conflict, we're living a very comfortable life here and a very safe life in this country. And I'm happy you came.
Yeah.
And I hope that many more come to this country and experience what it has to give.
So do we. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there any positive outlook on what is Israel doing against this evil propaganda from these terrorist regimes, and the influence that this population of, I don't know, like 2 million Arabs in Israel, what they're receiving every day?
I don't say this jokingly. We ask people to like, share, and subscribe. By the way, do that if you haven't done it yet. Like, share, and subscribe. And that's the answer to your question. You asked the question of how can we combat the lies that are spread by people. Exactly. The only way to combat the lies is by spreading the truth. And you're not going to convince a liar to stop being a liar. That's not going to happen. What you can do is you can reach the silent majority, and it is a silent majority, with a message that is more nuanced and more truthful. And again, we have our biases. It's not just us. There are many people that create good content here in Israel. And if you at least experience the nuance of it, it can change your worldview. And I'd say one more thing is important, that if people talk about what happens in this region, all they stick to is the facts. You know, it's X number of bombs, X number of bombing missions. That's not the point. The point is what is happening to the people. And I think that's where people need to gravitate towards. You get to experience that firsthand. You go back and people say, oh, Israel attacks and there's, apartheid and all these lies that are spread. Said, no, we walked down the streets of Jerusalem and that didn't exist. And we saw it. And yes, there's a security element to the way things operate there. But it's not what people are describing. It's not the violence that people are describing. You look at, oh, look, there's a war on the borders. No, there isn't. There are peaceful communities that live there. We're trying to protect ourselves against the enemies. And I think when you add a face to the story, and it's like personal, then it makes it much harder to be deceitful about things, and it makes it also much harder to say things that are blanket statements. Yeah. And that's where compassion comes into play.
So when you go back, tell your friends, and then bring them home, bring them here next trip. Tell them it's fun, it's nice to be here, and also tell them to seek the truth and share it. I think it's the most important thing is really to seek the truth and then to share what's happening in this region. And
come to visit,
pray, because this is also a spiritual war. It doesn't make any other sense why the entire world is focused on this tiny country, Israel, when you have multiple conflicts going on multiple locations. But this is the main focus of the United Nations, the main focus of all the news elements. This is another thing that God is trying to show the world, that He's faithful to the people of Israel, that He's faithful to His promises, and He will be faithful in the future to every one of us in every situation. So thanks for coming.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
coming.
very much
Good
for
time.
having
This
us.
is
Yeah.
God's,
been
God's favourite
great,
land
yeah.
and God's favourite people.
Amazing. Thank you.
To be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mati, just before I found you, what they were talking about.
On the financial side?
Yeah, what Netanyahu and Caprice, the Cyprus island.
We're talking about what?
President.
Back to Cyprus and
Yeah.
Turkey now on the financial deal.
So apparently we're planning a IMEC.
What does that mean? What's that? What is that?
So I put you that over there. You can.
Okay. What's that?
It's a
Is that
financial
That was
corridor.
yesterday.
a financial agreement through Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and this is something that started a few years ago. And what the plan is to revive that?
So yeah, yesterday.
It's
Oh.
the India, Middle East,
Okay,
European,
yeah, I see.
Europe Economic Corridor. Wow. That's what happens when you let. That's what happens when you let politicians and academics come up with acronyms.
Decide names.
Decide on
Yeah,
names.
you know.
My God, it's terrible. So we were talking about the Turkish financial incentive here, where they want to use Syria as a land corridor to sell electricity to and goods to, and then to shuttle oil and natural gas through. But Israel wants to do the same thing. We want to help bring a better financial future to this region, and that ties in what we've talked about in the past. Ties in the Indians, ties in the Europeans, and then we have a ton of natural gas in Israel. Not a ton. We have thousands of cubic meters not thousands, millions of cubic meters of natural gas
In the Israeli waters.
in Israeli financial waters, as does
Lebanon.
Egypt, as does Lebanon. And we want to create a pipeline that runs from Israel through Cyprus, I believe, or by Cyprus, and then into the Aegean Sea to Greece.
Yeah, so basically, by
We're
having
cutting the
peace
Turks.
and military cooperation with the neighboring countries in this region, everybody can prosper. This is the whole point. It's like
Yeah.
peace is profitable for everybody. The quality of life will increase 10 or 100 times for the people of the Middle East if only they stop attacking Israel.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. I think this is a good time to end, unless you have something to add, Mati.
I was thinking about where we want to take this. I think the one thing to end on is to care for what's happening in Syria right now.
Yeah.
And we can talk geopolitics till, we're blue in the face. That's not what we're here for. There are people right now on the ground who are suffering in Syria. Every religious and ethnic minority in Syria has experienced what it means to live under a radical Islamic regime.
And that means Christians, Druze, Alawites, and any other
And the list is
minority.
is
It
endless.
grows, yes.
It's going to continue indefinitely. And these people need to be prayed for, and action needs to be taken to protect them. And this is the case anywhere that radical Islam is touched. Think about the Iranians, what they've done, that their country that is about, I think it's over 30% of the country is ethnic minorities, the Baluchis and even Sunnis inside the country.
And many Christians now
Yeah.
coming to faith in Iran.
Yeah, but and all the
They're
minorities there suffer, and the minorities under Iraq when it fell into the hands of ISIS, and then Iran after that, the minorities suffer, and the minorities in Lebanon are suffering, and the minorities now in Syria are suffering.
And in Turkey.
Yeah, and UN, I think most boots on the ground reports with a call to prayer for people. And I think people need to pray for what's happening in Syria, and they need to call on governments to take action to safeguard and protect the lives of those people. This isn't just about Israel. Israel will take care of itself in this case. But we need people to care about the minorities in this region, because they're falling into the same fate of every other minority that falls under radical Islam.
Yeah.
And that is, they're being killed, they're being pushed out, and their heritage and their lives and their memory has been wiped out. We're only a few weeks after the International Holocaust Day, Memorial Day. And people think it's a thing of the past. It is not a thing of the past.
It repeats itself.
The same hateful rhetoric, the same mind of destruction of people and groups still exist, and people need to stand up for what is right in this region. And my takeaway is, I want to ask everyone who's watching this to take a moment to pray for the people of southern Syria, specifically the Druze community, and to call on their governments and call on their people and share and like and subscribe on social media to people that talk against what's happening inside Syria, because that's the true tragedy here.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll take it a step further. And this is something that is very hard for me also personally to do, is that to pray for our enemies, like to pray for the Houthis, not to pray for them to succeed and to have better missiles, but to pray that God will change their heart from hatred against Israel to love for the people of Israel.
Yes.
Or
And
to their
also-
own people.
Or to their own people, yeah. And God can do that. And the same thing goes to all of our enemies, wherever they are in this region, and we're not lacking them. And God can do that. Okay? So thanks, Mati. I know
you,
you have to go. Thanks, Tomer. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to the amazing crew that we have here at TBN Israel. And thank you for watching. We do this because of you. So please like, share, subscribe, and stand with Israel in prayer. And we'll see you again next time for another TBN Israel, the podcast.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel.